All right, in this video we're going to talk about Nick's boots, particularly the Overlanders in the 1964 walnut leather. I absolutely love these boots, but there's a few things you need to know. Before we get into that, disclaimer, first off, this video is not sponsored by Nick's, and these thoughts are my own, these opinions are my own, there's no script or nothing like that. But they are sponsoring some of my cabin building episodes, and so obviously I'm affiliated with them in that way, so, take this as you will. But the reason I want to make this video is because if people actually go and buy these boots because of the sponsorships, there's the things that I really want you to know. I don't want you to be upset with me when you get the boots and they're not comfortable, or if you wear them for a month and they get really uncomfortable, or the sizing's wrong. I wanted to just take the time to explain some of these things because I really believe that everybody whose feet are no longer growing deserve a really good pair of boots, and I highly recommend Nick's boots. I've been wearing these now for 5 months, and they have officially hit slipper status. They are so comfortable. At the end of the day, I don't even want to take them off. It used to be a thing. Kayla and I used to always have this little tradition that at lunchtime or end of the day, it's like a big celebration when we take off our boots and we put on our moccasins, because we were wearing boots that have liners in them or Gore-Tex. Our feet are getting really hot and sweaty and uncomfortable, and it was just always the best part of the day to get your boots off. And now that I'm wearing these, it's not even on my mind. I go right into the evening, dinner time, we're cooking around a fire. I have no interest in changing my boots. They're just comfortable, and so I highly recommend them, but there's a lot that you need to know and a lot of lessons that I learned along the way. So I want to just explain some of that. The other reason I want to make this video is I also work at an architecture firm. I spend a lot of time on construction sites. I see a lot of guys wearing work boots, and I've never seen anybody wear Nick's. This is here, I'm in Canada. In fact, I've never even met anybody that knows of Nick's, and so I feel like word needs to be spread. Everybody's buying work boots that range between $250 to $300, and they're getting about 6 months to a year out of them. Meanwhile, they get more uncomfortable as you wear them. They start to kind of fall apart, and you're spending, a good amount of money on boots. You're spending, $500 on boots a year anyways, where you could buy a higher quality pair of boots, which these are going to cost you about double the price of a pair of those boots. But arguably, you're going to get more than double the time or a lot longer, especially if you resole them. You can keep all the upper leather and just put new soles on them and get another lifetime out of them. And the whole time you wear them, they're going to be way more comfortable, way more enjoyable to wear. So, I highly recommend Nick's boots, and we're just going to go into a few more details of what to expect if you're going to make a purchase, and then once you get them, what to expect then. So let's first clean these boots up. I want to give them a nice polish. Not a polish, but just an oiling like I normally would. If you take good care of your boots, they're going to last a lot longer, and that's important. So we're going to go through that step. I also want to mention that if you see a bunch of stuff flying around in front of the camera, these are black flies. This is the woods in Canada. This is what I have to live with in the spring. It's either black flies in my face or smoke, trying to get rid of them. But it's a small price to pay to be able to be out here, and it's only about a month of the year that it's this bad, and just happens to be that time of the year right now. All right, this is my boot cleaning kit. This is just a really coarse brush. This is actually used for, I think, doing dishes. I'll go through the boots and just get rid of all the really coarse dirt and get as much of that off as possible. I'll use a toothbrush to get in there and get in around all the tighter areas. Once I feel like I got all the coarse dirt off, I'm just going to give it another brush just to, really remove any fine dust. After that, I'm going to be putting some oil on them. I personally use this one. This is called Canadian Bee Seal. It's got ingredients here are coconut oil, beeswax, olive oil, canola oil, lemongrass, tea tree oil, vitamin E, and that's it. All ingredients are sourced from local Canadian companies. These are my homies. This is stuff I've been using for at least a year now, and really, really like that. I just apply that with a piece of wool. Nick's also has a product. I only mention this one and not this one only because I haven't really tried this as much. I've used it once. I'm sure it's similar stuff. And then once that has been applied, I'll just let that set for a little bit, and then I'll clean it all off with a horsehair brush. So while I clean these boots up, let me just go over a few of the specs on these. These are the 1964 walnut leather that's produced by Seidel. Now this is what they call an easy break-in leather. The reason I think this leather is so fantastic is that, yeah, it's easy break-in and it's soft, but it is incredibly durable. I walk around on a lot of sticks. I'm felling trees. There's a lot of branches that come down, and sometimes what happens is my front foot steps down on a stick, and my back foot comes and kicks it. So my front foot steps down on a stick, and it pops it up, and then my back foot, as it's coming forward, kicks the back of that stick that's being held down by my front foot, and I'm constantly banging the toes of my boots against branches and sticks, and so I'm really hard on leather boots. This leather is holding up better than anything I've ever experienced. The toes, after a little cleanup, they're back to normal, and they've been heavily abused. So despite it being easy break-in leather and quite a soft, comfortable leather, incredibly durable, at least for everything that I'm using it for. The leather was actually developed because a pair of boots got brought into Nick's that was quite old. And when they were looking at the boots, they looked at the leather and thought, this is a really nice leather. And I guess that's where the name comes from. 1964, maybe they thought that's when those boots were made, and they were trying to reproduce that same leather. Kind of has that heritage vibe to it, but still being a really durable work boot leather. The last on this boot is the H&W Moderate Arch Last. The sole on these is the V100 lug sole. This is a really heavy-duty traction sole. It's a real universal boot, whether you're hiking, riding motorcycles, climbing mountains, working in the forest, whatever you got to do, working on a construction site. It's a real nice all-round boot that's going to keep your feet comfortable, keep your feet safe, and serve you well. So highly recommend the Overlander. So some of you are probably wondering what this is. This is called a kiltie. And it serves two purposes, well, maybe three. One of them is that it protects the boot a little bit more, and also mostly from these, the leather laces and stuff along the top. It just gives a little bit more protection from the top. It also helps make sure that all the dirt and mud and sawdust that's coming in from the top of your boot has a better chance of sliding out rather than getting stuck in here under the laces. And it also just adds a little bit more protection so that these laces aren't digging into your top of your feet. You just get a layer of comfort there. All right, so let's talk about what makes Nick's different than the rest. As you can see, I've gone through a number of pair of work boots. In fact, these are not all the boots. When I wear a pair of boots out, I throw them out. These are the boots I had when I started wearing Nick's, and they just kind of got put in a bin and set aside until I kind of figured out where I stood with the Nick's boots. So what makes them different? I mean, they look the same from a distance, right? But let's start taking a little closer look. So all of these boots are essentially the same model. One of them is insulated, but in every single pair of boots here in this pile, I've got cracks right there in the sole. And it happened on every single pair of boots. So that is not leather. This is a piece of plastic. This is leather all the way through. Leather, and then a rubber sole, and then more leather, and then a rubber sole, whereas this is just a big chunk of rubber the whole way through. So I'm getting plastic, and I'm getting rubber, which is much cheaper than leather and leather and leather. So Nick's is putting a lot more value into the materials. When you look at the inside, you got the same kind of story. On the inside of these boots, you got a liner. It's a much thinner leather, and these actually are not bad as far as leather quality. I've had a lot worse boots that I've thrown out. I actually have a pair of Timberlands that I should have brought today. I'm going to splice them in here, but right away the backstay just ripped right off, like within a couple weeks of owning the boots. The leather's just so thin. It's got a liner. It's just, it feels cheap. When you compare it to a pair of really thick, nice leather boots, you go look at the Timberlands and they're just like, you realize these are cheaply made boots. These boots, again, not the worst, not bad, but they have a liner in them. The downside of that liner is, in my opinion, is that it makes your feet sweat. They get really hot. They hold smell versus just having one big chunk of leather. The same leather that's on the outside is the same leather that's on the inside. It's just a nice heavy duty piece of leather that molds to your foot, only gets more comfortable as you wear it. And from my experience so far, it doesn't make your feet so hot and sweaty and trap the moisture and trap the heat in there. It just, it's more like a classic moccasin or just an old-fashioned leather boot. And it works better. It works better than trying to jam in a bunch of technology and layers and materials in order to cut costs in the raw product. Nick's just keeps it really classic, just going the classic high quality leather, stitching it on with a heavy duty double stitch. This is a stitch down construction. I'm not going to get into any of the specifics about construction type. If you want to learn about that, you can look at websites like Rosanville. There's Reddit forums. The Nick's website's also a great resource, Nick's YouTube channel. Google, stitch down construction and other reviews for the more detailed breakdown of what makes these boots great. But I'm just trying to talk to the general guy out there that's not really a boot nerd and just, maybe needs a little push to spend a little bit more money on buying higher quality boots so that they enjoy their days a little bit more. Okay, just for fun, I put on a pair of the boots that were over here that I basically wore to build this whole cabin. And I'm shocked. Like, they are so uncomfortable in comparison. When I was sitting down and I put them on, I was like, oh, these are actually really soft and comfortable. And then as soon as I stood up and started walking in them, my toes are all squished. My feet just are not cradled where they're supposed to be. I can literally feel like multiple points where my feet are touching the sole and then just gaps underneath my arch. Whereas the Nick's boots, the leather soles are just going to absorb to your feet. That's what makes them so comfortable over time and why it takes them a long time to break in. So let's talk a little bit about sizing and choosing a last and what to expect during the break-in period. I also want to mention, just so I don't forget, the people at Nick's are good people. They have a podcast, they interview their staff, they interview the cobblers, they interview the general manager, the CEO, the guys in sales. They're a really opened company, and nobody seems to have a huge ego where they claim to be the best or, they have any big statements. They're just an old-fashioned company that's growing really quickly because people are starting to learn about Nick's, and they're just trying to keep up and do the best they can, and they are hustling. These people are working really hard, and I just want to give a shout-out to the people at Nick's because they're just a small company growing quickly, working hard, and they seem to have a ton of fun. They're laughing, telling jokes, and just, you got to respect a company that is making something in the USA, American-made, paying people properly. I can't really speak to that, but I assume so because people seem happy, and just having a great workplace and producing a great product. So just a shout-out to all the managers and the people at Nick's that keeping that company is what it is. Okay, let's talk about last. I got two options. So these boots here are a new pair of boots. These are the shrunken bison leather. So they have me testing these out. They're curious to see how well the leather holds up in comparison to my 1964 leather. We won't get into that now, but what I want to show you is the last. So you might be able to see here. So a last, just for those of you that don't know, a last is the piece. You've probably seen these. It looks like a foot made out of plastic, traditionally made out of wood, and it's what they shape the boot around. And different lasts are going to create different shapes. And so the last is what determines how the shape of the boot is made. And so the difference between an H&W last and the 55 last is much more arch support. The H&W is much flatter, and the 55 Last has a higher arch support. So the pros and cons to both. For me, the 55 Last feels more comfortable. There's a longer break-in period. When you first put it on, it just feels a bit awkward, and it's hard to kind of get used to. But once you get used to it, I think it allows you to spend more hours on your feet, and it just gives your foot more of a cradle. But that also really depends on your foot type. So one of the things that you need to think about when you're ordering a pair of boots or going to the store to buy a pair of boots, ideally try to get fit in store if possible. But for those of you like me that are just across a country and up a country, ordering this online is the only way that we can really go about it. Although I should mention that I just heard on the podcast that people have flown in just to go to the store to get fit for boots, not just within the US, but from different countries. They'll fly specifically just to their store to get fit, to get a pair of Nicks. So there's some really huge diehard fans out there. I apologize that I'm swatting my face here. These black flies are eating me. Anyways, back to the Last. So, and for me, the benefit of the H&W Last is I just have a bit more of a low profile feel, so I'm more connected to what I'm stepping on. So if I'm climbing around on rafters or on the roof, the H&W just seems more comfortable, and it's a bit more of a dressier look, a little bit more low profile and Last. So, it depends on what you're doing. A lot of people talk about the higher arch Last being better if you're climbing ladders all day. For me, I find either Last fine for working on the ladder, but it really depends on your foot type. And maybe, like me, you can prefer both. So some days I'm more in the mood for 55 Last. I want that arch support. I want to be on my feet all day long, and I want that nice comfort within the arch of my foot. And then some days I'm just looking for something a little bit more low profile and just easy to, walk around in with a little less heel bed. So that's the difference between these two Lasts. There's more options out there, so look at the Nicks website. I would say these are probably their two most popular, but they are always coming out with new stuff. So, look at the Lasts, and just want to give you an overview of what Lasts are. The next thing is sizing. Sizing is a huge issue with Nicks because if you just go to order the same size in Nicks that you get in a Nike, you're going to have a completely wrong fit. But on the Nicks website, they have sizing charts, sizing guides. Highly recommend you do that. Don't just order the size that you normally get. Look into the sizing that they provide on the website and follow the instructions. And don't worry if you get it wrong, because Nicks has one free exchange if it doesn't fit the way you want it to fit. And if it doesn't fit the way you want it to fit, like if it doesn't fit great, do that. Send it back. I got so excited when these Nicks arrived and they were a little big. I just was so excited to wear them, I didn't care. I put them on, started wearing them. Maybe I should have sent them back, but I'm not disappointed, because when it gets cold and I'm putting on a pair of really thick wool socks, they fit great. And honestly, even in thin socks, they still fit great because your feet mold to it. The beautiful thing about high quality leather is that it molds to your feet. So that's going to kind of help. We're going to talk a little bit about that as we talk about break-in, which I guess we're going to now. But this leather will shape to your foot, and that's what makes these boots so great. If they're a little big, little small, little wide, little thin, just keep wearing them and they will break in. So my experience with the break-in was as follows. I got the boots, just super proud and excited to be wearing a pair of Nicks. And I just put them on, started wearing them. And I don't know if I was just so excited to wear Nicks that I didn't feel any pain, but like day 2, I was like, these are awesome. They're comfortable. I was wearing them all day long and had no issues. That's not common. From what I understand, most people get boots, they wear them for a couple hours, the feet get really sore, they take them off. And there's like a process of a couple hours a day, slowly getting used to the boots. I didn't really have that. For me, I put these boots on and they were comfortable out of the gate. I didn't have that case with these. With the 55 Last, that Last takes a while to kind of absorb and shape to the arch of your foot. So these ones I was wearing for only a couple hours at a time. But like I said, for these ones, I just kind of got off and running and was wearing them all the time. And then about a month in, I felt like my feet were going like this. I felt like this foot was always kind of angling in, and it felt like my ankle was kind of getting sore. And so I spoke to Grant, who's the GM at Nick's, and I said, I don't know, maybe this last's not for me. They don't feel comfortable. I feel like my there's a technical name for that. I don't know what it is, but my foot was kind of like angling inwards, and I kind of stopped wearing them for a little bit and was really unsure, like, do I want to promote Nick's? Do I want to work with this company? And thankfully, Grant just said, keep wearing them. It's probably just break-in. And I'm thinking, what is he talking about? Like, these boots have never really been uncomfortable. I've been wearing them for a month. The leather's fine around my leg. Like, I have no hot spots. This isn't a break-in thing. Like, this is a problem with the boots. And this is why I want to make this video, because I'm sure somebody's going to buy boots and they're going to be disappointed at a certain point. And luckily, I just listened to Grant and I kept wearing the boots. And I think what had happened is that just the way that I walk, I put pressure points on one side of the boot more than the other. And so my boot probably did start to do a little bit of this on the insole. But as time went on, it balanced out. So during that intermediate time, I put some arch supports in the boots and was wearing them like that. And it seemed to make it feel better, but I was kind of like, how can I recommend a pair of $600 boots and I have to put arch supports in? And I was a little bit unsure whether I actually wanted to work with Nick's or not, thinking, are these boots really that great? Wore the arch supports for a week, kind of kept wearing them, thinking, okay, well, you know, I gotta give these an honest effort. And then just at some point, I took the arch supports out, kind of thinking they were kind of slipping around. They were plastic arch supports. They weren't great. I took them out. I kept wearing them. And at some point, they just started to feel amazing. And I was just working on the cabin, going up and down the stairs, running around. And I was just like, I'm wearing slippers. These are work boot slippers. And it was just like an aha moment that I had never experienced before. It sounds like I'm over exaggerating, but until you know what that feels like, until you have a pair of work boots that for your whole life have felt uncomfortable and you just accept work boots aren't comfortable, when you get into a pair of work boots that you've properly broken in and they start to feel like slippers and they feel like they're just shaped to your foot and they're super comfortable and your feet are not sore, they're not hot, they feel protected, it's a really great feeling. And so I got back on the phone with Grant and said, you were right. I'm sorry. Sorry for wasting your time. And he said, that's totally normal. He says, of all the customers that call and complain, we usually just tell them, keep wearing them for a couple more months. And if you still have a problem, we'll deal with it. And he says, they usually don't hear back from 80% of those customers. There's a time frame that it takes for that leather to really shape to your foot. And that's just kind of the reality of breaking in a pair of boots. But once you get there, they're super comfortable. So now along the topic of breaking in, and I did learn this because I had some other pairs of leather boots as I was kind of finding the right boot brand for me. I was trying a few different boot companies out. And so one of the really important things is that when you first get your boots and you start wearing them, really pay attention to how your tongue's fitting, how this piece is folding. And if you start to feel pain, try to adjust it right away, because however that boot starts to get worn is how it's naturally going to fold into place when you tie it up. And so if something's not feeling comfortable, fold it a different way. With these boots, I felt like the best thing to do was just fold, this I should mention, this piece here, this tongue piece, it's one solid stitch all the way along. So this whole boot is like a tube. There's no space in here. So in order for you to get your foot on, it has to be, pretty spacious. But then when you tie it up, this leather has to get bunched up and go somewhere. So you can choose to tuck it in on the sides, like I did here. On this boot, I just tucked it on the sides and I folded it over. But on this boot, it just felt better to bunch it up in the middle and overlap it in the center. So pay a lot of attention to that when you're first wearing your boots, and figure out how you want everything to kind of fit into place, and how you want the leather to fold, and how you want it to tuck, and how you want to lace it, because you're training that boot to a certain shape. And if you're not paying attention, and like I had another pair of boots and the tongue was always going crooked, and I was kind of complaining that the boots sucked because the tongue was crooked and everything was kind of wonky, and I realize now that was probably my fault. I wasn't spending enough time getting everything nice and straight and tight when I first started wearing those boots, and I've kind of trained it to go all wonky. So pay attention to how everything's fitting and folding, and make an effort to make that boot yours and make it customized to fit your foot as good as possible. I mean, look at these boots. Most guys are 5 months in and they're already starting to think about buying another pair of boots. These are just getting warmed up. They're just getting broken in, and they're just getting ready for a lot of good days ahead. I've been pushing them hard. I've been wearing them in the snow, in the slush, in the salt. I've been trying to beat them up, because in order for me to give an honest review, I like to make sure that I'm speaking from firsthand experience that this is a quality product. And so I've been super, super hard on these boots. And after a little brush and oil, they look fantastic. Those are the Nick's Overlanders. So in conclusion, these are not the boots that you buy and keep in the box until your first day of work and then pull them out and expect everything to be fine. Even if they're comfortable at first, like I found them to be, they might actually get more uncomfortable over the first few weeks as you kind of break them in and they start to shift and adjust. But eventually, when you get through that break-in period, you're not going to regret it. You're going to be happy that you spent the money and bought a good quality pair of boots. And I highly encourage you to take care of them, brush them, oil them, and they're going to last you a really long time. So if you hadn't heard of Nick's before, I sure hope you take the plunge and you put down some money and you buy yourself a nice pair of boots, because you deserve it. Thanks for watching.